us now is the Michigan State Representative from District 29, representing Auburn Hills, Kegel Harbor, Orchard Lake Village, Pontiac, and Sylvan Lake. Representative Brenda Carter back with us on the Megacast. Representative Carter, thank you for being with us today.
Tyler, thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. You are the co-chair of the Michigan Legislature's Firearm Safety and Violence Prevention Caucus. Here we are, just 2 weeks and 2 days following the tragic shooting at Oxford High School that took the lives of 4 students, injured 6 others, and injured a teacher as well. In the wake of that mass shooting, in your Firearm Safety and Violence Prevention Caucus, being that you're the co-chair, where have the discussions on preventing further gun violence, particularly in our schools, but in general in the state of Michigan, where has that discussion among our lawmakers in the legislature began?
Well, Tyler, I'd like to say that we have actively addressed this situation. You know, this is not the first time that Michigan has had a mass shooting. And of course, you know, gun violence is in just about all of our cities right now. But since its inception, we've introduced over 50 pieces of legislation. And in light of what has happened in Oxford, We've met twice, actually, the caucus. We held a press conference to update the community where we are. We met with our stakeholders. We met with legislators on both sides of the aisle. And, you know, of course, Senator Rosemary Bear, whose district includes Oxford, and she comes from Oxford, she has taken the charge to ensure that we do everything humanly possible to mitigate future gun violence.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter, Michigan State Representative from District 29. And Representative Carter, from you and from other, particularly Democrats at the state level, we've been seeing a lot of fodder on social media and in interviews talking about other bills that have already been proposed, have already been through at least some voting process or some process to get to try to bring them to a vote at the state level. And for one reason or another, because of a lack of compromise from the other side of the aisle or certain issues with certain bills, whatever the case may be, they have not gone either not gone to a vote or have not passed. Being that I would imagine every leader at the state level, regardless of their political affiliations, wants to prevent another tragedy like this, wants to solve the issues or at least resolve some parts of the issues that have led to incidents such as what happened at Oxford High School and other schools, other places and other mass shootings in the state of Michigan. So being that there's that urgency there and that there's that recency of this tragic event that is kind of the onset of making that a greater issue of importance at this moment in time, where seems to be, in your opinion, from your discussions with people across the aisle and within your own caucus, where seems to be that sticking point where compromise hasn't been able to happen in regard to moving the needle forward on reducing gun violence here in the state of Michigan?
Well, it's my opinion that both sides of the aisle, we do want to see a compromise here. I've had conversations with some of my Republican colleagues that, you know, they do value their Second Amendment rights. In fact, that's not a Republican issue. There are people on the Democratic side of the aisle also value their Second Amendment rights. Yeah. But I have heard of some movement. I'm not sure how much, simply because we've introduced so many bills, over 50, dozens of bills, and at this point they don't get a hearing. My bill in particular is in the military and veterans caucus, and it hasn't moved. The Homeland Security Committee, it hasn't moved. And none of these bills have had a hearing. I'm cautiously optimistic now that maybe, just maybe, in light of what happened in Oxford, that maybe we can come together and at least listen to each other. I think we're on that path.
So then, Representative Carter, how can this time be different? Because we've seen, not only here in the state of Michigan, the wake of the shooting at Oxford High School, but in the past when there's been school shootings where especially where several lives have been lost, such as several years ago at Parkland High School at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, or at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, or wherever these shootings have happened. There always seems to be that initial discussion about the urgency of solving these issues, and then time passes, discussions happen, debates happen, and eventually that urgency fades away. So what may be different this time, or will things be different this time at the state level here in Michigan?
Well, Tyler, I strongly recommend at this point that the people get involved. The legislature we're kind of like, at a gridlock here with the legislation. But if the people get involved, if the people don't get involved, it's not going to change. The people need to call us, call our elected officials, and say one side or the other, this is how I feel. But I believe both sides don't want to see any more senseless loss of life. So the people need to reach out to us, the legislators on the state and on the federal level, and let us know exactly where they are with gun violence and preventing gun violence. I think that's the only thing that's going to change this, really, seriously.
And so at the state level, from your caucus on the Democratic side, as well as from your colleagues in the Republican caucus, what are some various pieces of legislation from one party or the other, or bipartisan legislation that's either in discussion right now on this front, or maybe going up for a vote very soon?
Well, I know my bill, House Bill 5628, is one of the 4 bills that limit magazine capacity. And we're looking at this as just an issue about time. It takes time to reload. So if we slow things down, maybe that will give time for the police to get there, or maybe give precious time for some of the victims to escape. I know that there's legislation, or at least I've heard that there's legislation being put together on the Republican side, but I'm not privy of that information yet. There's a litany of bills out there that on the Democratic side being introduced by just about everyone. I'd love to share that with you, but the whole thing of it is we just have to be able to move this forward. Maybe if we put those bills, and it was put out there in the media, which bills are out there and what we're trying to move forward. But maybe we can just get our Michiganders involved from all over the state and say, yeah, we love to hunt, we love our guns, but we do not want to see any more senseless gun violence. So we have a lot of bills out there. We just need help. We need help from the people now.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter from the Michigan State Legislature, serving District 29, including Auburn Hills, Keego Harbor, Orchard Lake Village, Pontiac, and the city of Sylvan Lake. Representative Carter, beyond the gun rights issue, gun violence issue, mass shooting issue here in the state of Michigan, what are some other key issues that are being discussed at the state level, or other key legislation that should be on the people's radar going forward in our House of Representatives?
Absolutely. Actually, it's 2 bills that I just recently introduced. Both of these bills will sunset December 31st of this year, and I would love for the public to be made aware of these. The first one is the virtual meetings bill. What this will do is it will sunset the ability for local units of government, school districts to meet virtually. With the rise of the Omicron virus, and we're still in a pandemic with the Delta virus, a lot of the elected officials have reached out to me and said, hey, we need time to see the scope of this Omicron virus. Or one legislator in particularly said, my husband has a critical illness. I will not be able to serve if I have to go appear in a meeting in person. So that's one that we have right now that I hope that we get some traction on really quickly. Keep in mind, this one sunsets December 31st of this year. And the local units of government will have to come back and meet in person. Another bill, which is very, very important, and I'm glad, Tyler, that you're giving me the opportunity to speak on these bills. House Bill 5626 will extend the period of time that a person without auto insurance will go without being penalized. Right now, January 1st, 2022, if a person doesn't have auto insurance, then they run the risk of being penalized for not doing it. This would affect approximately 5,000 people per month. So by extending this to the end of the year 2022, it will give people a chance once again to come out of that pandemic period where a lot of people are not working and may not be able to afford the auto no fault premiums. It'll give them this additional time. Right now, the thing that's really questionable about the livelihood of Michiganders is, what is this pandemic doing? I mean, first we had the one pandemic, then we had the Delta variant, now we got the Omicron variant, and these different iterations of COVID-19 is affecting Michiganders across the board. And what we need to do is just take the time to give Michiganders a breath of fresh air. And I believe we could do it by extending both the virtual meeting bills and the insurance sunset bills.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter, Michigan State Representative from District 29, with us today on the Megacast. Representative Carter, just a few more minutes with you today before we'll say goodbye. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss that we haven't talked about already in terms of the work that you and your colleagues are doing in Lansing, representing the state of Michigan, or any other topics?
Well, Tyler, I am just extremely pleased that the growth that I've seen in House District 29, great shout out. I'm going to do a little letter out to the 5 communities that I serve. They're very, very special communities. I've seen just wonderful things, how they banded together as a district, not just 5 separate communities, but how they banded together as a district and reached out and helped each other regardless of what city that you live in. So I just want to thank all the people in House District 29 for the support that they've given me as I go into my 4th year in the House of Representatives. And of course, I wish everybody a safe and wonderful holiday season.
Well, Representative Carter, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your time and giving us some insight on key issues at the state level and other forms of legislation that are coming down the pike, or issues being discussed beyond those key issues that are on the forefront of public discussion at this moment in time.
Absolutely, Tyler. Anytime, please feel free to invite me.